What is it about the countryside that feels so unsettling? The rolling hills, the quaint villages, the deep, dark woods. It all seems peaceful on the surface, but just beneath that veneer of tranquility lies a darkness, an ancient power that hums with forgotten rituals and sinister secrets. This is the realm of folk horror. But what exactly is folk horror? You might have seen movies like The Wicker Man, Midsommar, or The Witch and felt that specific creeping dread. It's more than just a jump scare in a spooky forest. Folk horror taps into something much deeper, a primal fear of the old ways clashing with the new, the isolation of rural communities, and the terrifying idea that nature itself might be hostile to us. Let's break it down. At its core, folk horror often revolves around a few key elements. First, you have the landscape. It's not just a backdrop, it's a character in itself. The woods, the fields, the standing stones, they all hold a power, a memory of what came before. Think of the Blair Witch's Woods, a place that actively works against those who enter it. The environment is alive, and it's not always friendly. Next, you have isolated communities. These are places cut off from the modern world, where old traditions and beliefs have been preserved, sometimes to a terrifying degree. The people in these communities often have their own set of rules, their own morality. They can seem bizarre or downright monstrous to an outsider. This outsider is another crucial ingredient. Often, our story follows a protagonist, a police officer, a tourist, a researcher, who stumbles into this closed-off world. They represent modernity, logic, and reason, and they're about to come face-to-face with something that defies all of it. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, there's the element of paganism and folklore. Folk horror is obsessed with the idea of a pagan survival. It imagines that beneath the surface of our modern, Christianized world, the old gods, the old rituals, and the old sacrifices never truly went away. They're just waiting for the right moment to re-emerge. This often culminates in a terrifying spectacle, a bizarre festival, a human sacrifice, or the summoning of an ancient earthy entity. The term folk horror really gained traction thanks to a trio of British films from the late 60s and early 70s. They're often called the Unholy Trinity. The first is 1968's Witchfinder General. It's a brutal historical film about a real-life witch hunter during the English Civil War. While it's more historical than supernatural, it perfectly captures the paranoia and the violence that can erupt in the countryside when belief systems clash. It shows how the landscape itself can be tainted by bloodshed. Then came 1971's The Blood on Satan's Claw. This one cranks up the supernatural. In a 17th century village, children start finding strange patches of fur and skeletal remains in a field. Soon, they form a cult, performing dark rituals to resurrect a demon. It's a terrifying story about the corruption of innocence and the reawakening of ancient evil from the very soil itself. The film is drenched in a muddy, grimy atmosphere that makes you feel the chill of the English countryside deep in your bones. And finally, the film that many consider the absolute pinnacle of the genre, 1973's The Wicker Man. Not the Nicolas Cage one. Please, the original. It's the story of a devoutly Christian police sergeant who travels to a remote Scottish island to investigate a missing girl. What he finds is a community that has completely embraced old pagan ways. The film is a masterclass in building slow-burn dread. It's sunny, the people are singing and laughing, but something is profoundly wrong. The final confrontation between Christian faith and pagan belief is one of the most shocking and unforgettable endings in cinema history. These three films laid the groundwork. They established the key themes: the power of the landscape, the danger of isolated communities, and the terrifying persistence of ancient beliefs. For a long time after this initial wave, folk horror seemed to go back underground, just like the old gods it depicted. But in the 21st century, it came roaring back. Why? Well, maybe in our increasingly globalized digital world, we feel a strange pull towards the local, the ancient, and the authentic, even if it's terrifying. We're more aware than ever of environmental concerns, which gives the idea of a vengeful, sentient nature a new kind of power. Filmmakers like Robert Eggers with The Witch gave us a meticulously researched, deeply frightening look at a Puritan family unraveling under the threat of witchcraft in 17th century New England. The isolation and religious paranoia are so thick you can barely breathe. Then you have Ari Aster's Midsommar, which took the folk horror template and set it in the bright, perpetual daylight of a Swedish midsummer festival. It proved that this type of horror doesn't need darkness to be terrifying. Sometimes the most awful things happen in plain sight, with a smile. And it's not just an English or American thing. We see folk horror elements all over the world, from the haunting Icelandic film Lamb, to the chilling Spanish movie The Coven, to the eerie Indonesian horror Empedagor, which delves into village curses and generational secrets. Each culture brings its own unique folklore, its own ancient fears to the table. This shows just how universal these themes are: the fear of the unknown in our own backyard, the conflict between tradition and progress, and the suspicion that the modern world is just a thin layer of ice over a deep, dark ocean of ancient history. Folk horror isn't just about movies either. It thrives in literature and the ghost stories of M.R. James, the weird fiction of Arthur Mahan, and the works of contemporary authors who weave folklore into their tales. It's in video games where players explore haunted villages and uncover dark secrets. It's a subgenre that's as alive and adaptable as the traditions it draws from. So, what is it that makes folk horror so enduringly scary? I think it's S because it doesn't rely on simple monsters or ghosts. They can be easily defeated. The monster in folk horror is often an entire community, a system of belief, or the land itself. You can't shoot it or exorcise it. The outsider protagonist is almost always doomed because they're not just fighting a creature. They're fighting a worldview, a history that is literally rooted in the ground beneath their feet. It reminds us that no matter how modern we become, we are still connected to a long and often brutal human history. It whispers that the rational world we've built is fragile, and that in the quiet places, in the forgotten corners of the map, older and stranger things still hold sway. The next time you on a drive through the countryside and see a lone scarecrow in a field, or a strange circle of stones on a hill, you might just feel a little shiver run down your spine. And that shiver, that delightful creeping dread, is the very soul of folk horror. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark side of folklore, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the weird and wonderful world of horror. Let me know your favorite folk horror film in the comments below. See you next time.